Chapter 1. The Will Nobody Wanted. Elena Foster sat in the suffocating heat of a Texas probate office, the smell of stale coffee and cheap air freshener clinging to the walls. At 48, she'd learned how to survive, not by fighting, but by quietly enduring. Her dark hair, streaked with gray, was pulled back in a severe knot. Her hands, calloused from years of double shifts at the local hospital, were clenched tightly on her purse as her younger brother, Marcus, slouched beside her in a suit he hadn't ironed. Their mother's death had forced a reunion nobody wanted. The Foster family had drifted apart years ago, held together by tradition and the promise of a modest inheritance, a house on Cypress Lane and whatever was left of their father's old construction business. The lawyer's voice droned on, slicing the tension with phrases like undisclosed debts and contingency clauses. When he finished, the room was silent, except for Marcus muttering curses. But then came the twist. The will's executor revealed a locked box. Their mother's instructions were clear. Elena and Marcus must both be present to open it. A date was set for the next day. Elena's stomach turned. She hadn't come back for secrets. She'd come because she had nowhere else to go. Yet, something about the lawyer's solemnity gnawed at her. Flashback. Years earlier, Elena, newly married and full of hope, had left Cypress Lane for Houston, vowing never to return after her husband's betrayal and the town's cruel gossip. But as her own family shattered, Elena learned that some ties never truly break. Now, back in her childhood home, the creak of the floorboards sounded like old warnings. That night, she found an anonymous note shoved under her door. "You don't know half of what you inherited." Chapter 2. The Box and the Broken Picture. The morning sun was blinding, slicing through the torn curtains of the Foster house. Elena barely slept. She replayed the events of the previous day in her head. The reading of the will, Marcus's bitterness, and the heavy, cryptic box now sitting on their mother's old coffee table. Her nerves thrummed with a sick anticipation, the kind she remembered from childhood, when fights would break out over nothing and end with slammed doors and weeks of silence. Marcus was already in the living room, cup of instant coffee in one hand, phone in the other, texting someone furiously. He barely looked at Elena as she entered. The executor arrived at exactly 8:30 a.m., briefcase in hand, face set in bureaucratic neutrality. Without ceremony, he placed the box between Elena and Marcus. The lock was small but sturdy. Elena hesitated before fitting the key, the one their mother had kept hidden in her bedroom closet, wrapped in an old handkerchief, as if she wanted the past locked away forever. When the lid creaked open, dust motes rose in the air. Inside lay a bundle of envelopes, a faded black and white photograph, and a battered jewelry box. Elena reached for the photo. Their father, much younger, stood beside a stern-faced woman with familiar eyes, her eyes. On the back was a date from 1978 and a single name, Claire. Marcus scoffed. All this drama for old junk? The executor slid an envelope toward Elena, marked in their mother's handwriting. "Elena, read alone." Marcus lunged for it, but the lawyer stopped him cold. "Per your mother's instructions, only Elena may read this." Tension thickened the air. Marcus stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the window panes. Elena's hands shook as she took the letter, heart pounding. She read it alone in the silence of her childhood bedroom, where the wallpaper peeled and the air still smelled faintly of talcum powder. Her mother's words were both confession and warning. "I know you never forgave me for the secrets, for the silences, but there are things I carried so you wouldn't have to. The woman in the photo is your Aunt Claire. The town believes she ran away, but the truth is more dangerous. I helped her disappear after she witnessed something that could have destroyed our family and half the county with it. If you're reading this, someone else knows. Trust no one, not Marcus, not even me. The key belongs to the green trunk in the attic. Inside, you'll find what Claire left behind. Use it wisely. And Elena, don't let history repeat itself." The room spun. Elena felt sick. Her mother's warnings resurrected every childhood memory she'd tried to bury. Secretive phone calls, whispered arguments behind closed doors, sudden road trips with no explanation. The Foster family had always had skeletons, but Elena never thought they might be actual crimes. She forced herself to the attic. Dust choked her as she pried open the battered green trunk. Inside, stacks of old ledgers, a tape recorder, and another envelope, this one addressed simply to whom it may concern. Before Elena could investigate further, she heard voices downstairs. Someone was arguing with Marcus. Through the floorboards, she caught a male voice, cold and unfamiliar. "You think you're the only one who wants what's in that house? Tell your sister to mind her own business, or someone else will." Elena froze. The hair on her arms stood up. She stuffed the envelope and recorder into her bag, heart racing, and tiptoed back down. The stranger was gone, but Marcus glared at her with a mixture of fear and accusation. "Who was that?" she demanded. Marcus's eyes darted away. "No one. Just a neighbor. You always have to make everything a damn mystery, Elena." She didn't believe him. That night, as rain battered the windows, Elena locked her bedroom door. She played the tape recorder. Static, then a woman's trembling voice. "If anything happens to me, look for the answers in the old church records. They'll know why I had to run. I'm sorry, Elena. I'm so sorry." Suddenly, the power flickered and went out. From the darkness came a tapping at her window. Elena's blood ran cold. Chapter 3, Echoes in the Churchyard. Ellen awoke with a start, the echo of last night's tapping at her window still ringing in her ears. The morning was gray and humid, thick with the kind of Texas air that stuck to your skin. She barely slept. The tape recorder's message replayed in her mind, as did her mother's words, "Trust no one." She forced herself up, crossing to the window. Muddy footprints marked the porch roof just outside her room. Her hands trembled as she took a picture on her phone, proof she might need later. Marcus was nowhere to be found. His truck was gone from the driveway. The only sound in the house was the distant creak of settling wood and the drone of cicadas outside. Elena showered quickly, threw on jeans and a faded t-shirt, and shoved the envelope and recorder deep into her backpack. She didn't bother with breakfast. The hunger she felt was the sharp, gnawing kind that had nothing to do with food. She checked her phone again. 2 missed calls from an unknown number and a single text from Marcus, "Don't go anywhere today." She didn't reply. Instead, she grabbed the green trunk key and headed out the door, past the dusty photo of her parents' wedding that still hung crooked in the hallway, and into the heavy, uncertain air of Copper Falls. The town hadn't changed much since her childhood. The same 2-lane road wound past shuttered storefronts. The same weather-beaten banners announced the upcoming county fair. The same brick church with its white steeple stood at the edge of the cemetery. But for Elena, everything felt different. The place was still home, but now it was haunted by secrets, by grief, by the suspicion that someone was watching her every move. She parked near the church, heart pounding as she stepped onto the old stone path. The graveyard loomed, rows of crooked headstones vanishing into wild grass. She passed the graves of ancestors she'd never met, the foster name chiseled in stone. She tried not to look for her mother's grave. She wasn't ready. At the back of the church, a small door led to the records room. She'd spent hours there as a girl, helping her mother file old marriage and baptism certificates. The air inside was cool and musty, heavy with the scent of aging paper and candle wax. Elena's steps echoed on the linoleum as she made her way to the old wooden cabinet marked Archives. Day turned the key with a trembling hand. The lock resisted, then clicked. Inside were dozens of faded ledgers stacked haphazardly. Elena rifled through them, searching for anything marked with the year 1978, the date on the back of the photograph, the year Claire disappeared. After 10 minutes, her fingers closed on a thin blue ledger, edges brittle with age. She sat down, heart thumping, and turned to the pages marked April and May 1978. There, in the tight cursive of the long-gone pastor, was a single cryptic entry. Special confession, C. Foster, witness to event at Red Lake, referred to authorities, requested immediate confidentiality. Records sealed by family request. Her breath caught. Red Lake. It was a place their mother forbade them from visiting as kids. Elena remembered how she and Marcus would sneak there anyway, skipping stones, daring each other to swim in the cold, murky water. There'd been whispers about what happened there, a drowning maybe, or something worse. The adults never spoke of it. She snapped a picture of the ledger entry, then looked for more. In the back, a yellowed envelope had been wedged between books. On the front, a single word, Claire. Elena hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a short letter in Claire's spiky handwriting. If you're reading this, something has gone wrong. I saw what happened at Red Lake. I had told the truth, but the truth was buried. If you want answers, follow the money. The church account from 1978 will show you everything. I couldn't stay. I'm sorry. Elena's mind raced. Follow the money. She dug deeper into the records, searching for any mention of church funds or donations. One entry caught her eye: a massive donation in cash, made to the church's benevolence fund 2 days after Claire's confession. The donor? Anonymous. She was so focused she didn't hear the footsteps behind her until it was too late. The door creaked. Elena spun, heart in her throat. The church's caretaker, Mr. Jensen, stood in the doorway, his hands buried in his overalls. He was an old man, face-lined and eyes sharp. He studied Elena for a long moment, then spoke in a low voice. "Looking for ghosts, Miss Foster?" Elena forced a smile. "Just old records." He didn't move. "Ain't safe here alone. Town's got a way of chewing up its own." She gathered the papers quickly, sliding them into her bag. "Thanks for the warning, Mr. Jensen. I'll be quick." He nodded, but didn't leave. As Elena slipped past him, she caught the scent of cigar smoke, an odd detail that prickled in her memory. She hurried out, past the gravestones, past her mother's resting place, past the pain and the memories she'd fought so hard to bury. As she started the car, her phone buzzed. Another text, this one from a blocked number. "You're asking the wrong questions. Go home, Elena, before you end up like Claire." Her skin crawled. She gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. In her rearview mirror, a shadow moved between the graves. The past wasn't just alive, it was hunting her. Chapter 4, When the Past Knocks Twice. The warning lingered in Elena's mind as she drove away from the church. "Go home, Elena, before you end up like Claire." The message haunted her not just because of its threat, but because it rang with something familiar, an echo of the fear her mother had instilled in her since childhood. She clutched the steering wheel, white-knuckled, fighting the urge to look over her shoulder. The sun was dipping low, painting Copper Falls in harsh amber light. She made a quick turn off Main Street, deciding not to return home right away. Her father's old pickup was parked at the edge of town, by the only laundromat in 50 miles. She remembered her mother's stories, how she'd worked nights here when Elena and Marcus were little, how she'd used the payphone in the back to call her own mother for advice she'd never admit to needing. Elena stepped inside, greeted by the metallic tang of detergent and the persistent thrum of spinning washers. She sat at a plastic table by the window, spread out the church papers, and opened her notebook. There were so many pieces, none of them fitting yet. Claire's letter, the cryptic ledger, the anonymous donation after the Red Lake incident. Who would pay so much for silence? And why was her mother's name erased from every record after 1978? A group of local women church regulars were folding towels across the room. Their eyes flicked to Elena, then away. She caught a few snippets of whispered conversation. She was always the quiet one, that Claire, never quite fit in. Bless her heart. But her family trouble seems to follow. Elena kept her head down, but the tension was palpable. In a town like Copper Falls, history wasn't just a collection of facts. It was a living, breathing force. People remembered. People talked. Sometimes people lied to keep the peace. Her phone buzzed again, this time a voicemail from Marcus. "Elena, I'm sorry for leaving. Something's up. I got a call from someone who said you were poking around the church. You need to be careful. Call me as soon as you get this, please." She wanted to scream. Why was everyone warning her off? Why did Marcus sound afraid? She left her things, stepped out to the cracked parking lot, and called him back. Voicemail. She texted, "I'm not leaving. Meet me at Red Lake in an hour." She didn't know why she picked that place, except that it felt like the one spot left where she could still find the truth. If not about Claire, then about herself. As the sky darkened, Elena drove the back roads toward Red Lake. The road was rough, hemmed in by overgrown brush. She remembered how her mother would forbid them from coming here, how her father would laugh it off. "It's just a fishing hole, Lena, not a crime scene," and how Claire would get silent at the mention of the place. The fear in her mother's eyes whenever the lake came up at dinner was never just about water. She parked by the old pier, now half-rotted and sagging into the reeds. No other cars. The air was still, thick with mosquitoes and anticipation. She took out her flashlight and stepped onto the cracked boards, heart pounding in her chest. Flashback. Elena was 10, Marcus 12. Summer dusk, the lake mirror still. Claire sat at the edge of the pier, cigarette burning between her fingers. Elena watched her mother's reflection flicker on the water. "Why can't we swim here, Mama?" Claire's eyes darted to the far side of the lake, where the trees pressed tight against the shore. She stubbed out her cigarette and put a hand on Elena's shoulder. Some places keep secrets, Ellie. Some places never forget. Back in the present, Elena made her way to the edge of the dock, scanning the shadows. She half expected Marcus to jump out, teasing her for being jumpy. Instead, there was only the slow lap of water and the drone of insects. She turned when she heard footsteps. Not Marcus, someone lighter, slower. From the shadows emerged Mrs. Wright, the town's part-time librarian and full-time gossip. She held a battered tin box in her hands. "Elena Foster," Mrs. Wright said, her voice shaking only a little. "You don't know me well, but I knew your mother, and I know what it means to have people watching your every move." Elena's nerves were frayed. "What are you doing out here?" "I saw your car. I was on my way home. But I brought you something. It's been in the library safe for decades. Your mother left it with me the night before she disappeared." Elena took the box. Inside, old photos, some yellowed news clippings, a letter. The headline on one clipping: "Copper Falls teen dies in lake accident. Foul play suspected. Date: May 1978. Mrs. Wright leaned in, her voice lowering to a whisper. "Your mother wasn't the only one who saw what happened. There were others. I kept this because she asked me to. She said, if anyone ever came back asking questions, to give it to her daughter. She knew you'd return, eventually." Elena scanned the photos. Teenagers she didn't recognize, a church picnic by the lake, a picture of Claire with two men, one with his face carefully scratched out. Her hands shook as she read the letter. It was addressed to "My darling girl," and recounted how Claire had tried to save someone that night at Red Lake, but failed. They lied about what happened. The town chose silence over justice. If you want to know the real story, look for the one who was missing that night. He's still alive. A branch snapped in the woods. Mrs. Wright froze. "We need to leave," she whispered. "You're not safe out here." Elena pocketed the letter and photos. They rushed to her car. As they pulled away, headlights flared in the rearview mirror. Another car parked by the pier. Elena floored it, adrenaline surging. Only when she reached the main road did Mrs. Wright speak again. "Your mother was brave, Elena, but sometimes this town punishes bravery. Be careful whom you trust. Some of the living are more dangerous than the dead." As they drove in silence, Elena realized her mother's past wasn't just a tragedy. It was a trap, and she had just stepped into it. Chapter 5. The Lake, the Truth, and the Turning. The night after meeting Mrs. Wright didn't bring sleep. Elena lay awake in her rented room, the tin box open on the bed, its contents scattered across the faded quilt. She traced her mother's handwriting with her finger, rereading every word, memorizing the details. Each letter, each photograph, each name was now a piece of a puzzle she could no longer ignore. The secrets of Copper Falls were finally stirring, and with every answer came another question. By morning, the air had shifted, heavier, more charged. Elena's phone blinked with a message from Marcus. "Can't make it to Red Lake. Someone followed me. Laying low. Call you soon." No signature, just a timestamp from 3:14 a.m. She stared at it, the unease in her gut growing sharper. Marcus was scared, and if Marcus was scared, there was real danger. She made herself coffee in the tiny kitchenette, the old percolator grumbling like a warning. Outside, Copper Falls was waking up. Pickup trucks rumbled by. A flock of grackles swooped over the telephone wires. In the news, she caught a brief story. Red Lake, safety concerns renewed after vandalism at Old Pier. The reporter's voice sounded bored, almost rehearsed. By 10, she was back in the car, driving south toward the courthouse, clutching the box like a talisman. She was done hiding. She needed records, death certificates, police reports, whatever the clerk would let her see. The county building was a squat red brick relic with broken blinds in every window. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of musty paper and coffee burnt to tar. The records clerk, a woman in her 50s with wary blue eyes, sized up Elena in a single glance. "What are you looking for, honey?" "My mother's name was Claire Foster. I need to see incident reports from May 1978. Anything connected to Red Lake." The clerk's expression didn't change. "You know, we don't just hand those out." Elena reached into her bag and handed over Claire's letter. She died asking for answers. Maybe it's time someone listened. The woman read it silently, then slid a battered logbook across the counter. You get 15 minutes. Don't copy anything. I'll be watching. Elena scanned the entries. Most were mundane, noise complaints, lost dogs, the occasional bar fight. But then, May 22nd, 1978, drowning at Red Lake, teenager, Seth Barnett, foul play suspected, closed, insufficient evidence. And 2 days later, an addendum, witness, Claire Foster, testimony sealed by request. She kept turning pages. There was nothing else about her mother, but other names popped up. Names that matched those in the photographs from Mrs. Wright's box. Teens, now middle-aged, most still living in Copper Falls. One, Daniel McKee, was listed as missing that same night, never found. Her mother's words echoed in Elena's mind. Look for the one who was missing that night. He's still alive. Heart pounding, Elena jotted names in her notebook, careful not to let the clerk see. As her time expired, she closed the book, nodded her thanks, and left, the puzzle forming at the edges. Outside, the sun had grown oppressive, shimmering off the courthouse steps. She ducked into her car, pulse racing, and called Marcus again. Still no answer. Instead, she texted, "Who's Daniel McKee? Call me, urgent." For the rest of the day, Elena drove the town, stopping at every place she remembered from childhood. The Dairy Queen on Route 6, the thrift store where her mother used to shop for school clothes, the vacant lot where the carnival came each August. She was searching, but for what she couldn't say, only that somewhere someone was watching her, waiting for her to slip. At dusk, she returned to the old Foster house, the porch still sagging, its paint peeling in long white strips. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and memories. On the wall hung a faded photograph. Claire, Marcus, and herself, sunburned and smiling by Red Lake, years before it turned from playground to graveyard. A creak upstairs startled her. She froze, keys clutched in her fist, heart hammering in her ears. Another creak, footsteps, deliberate and slow. Elena forced herself up the stairs, each board complaining beneath her weight. The hallway was dim, lit only by the dying sunset through a narrow window. She heard a whisper, a scrape, then silence. At the end of the hall, the guest bedroom door was ajar. Elena pushed it open with trembling hands. Inside, the room was empty, except for an envelope on the bed, her name printed in neat, unfamiliar script. She ripped it open. Inside, a single Polaroid photograph. In it, a group of teenagers stood by Red Lake, faces blurred by time and sun, but in the background, standing apart, was a boy, his face half in shadow. On the back, scrawled in red ink, "Some ghosts don't stay buried." Elena stared at the photo, pulse pounding. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air colder. She heard a noise downstairs, the front door closing, quickly but quietly. She raced to the window and saw a figure in a dark hoodie walking away, disappearing down the street. She grabbed her phone, fumbling for 911, then stopped. What could she say? That someone had left her a warning? That a ghost from 1978 was stalking her through Copper Falls? Instead, she sank to the floor, the photo pressed to her chest. For the first time since returning home, she allowed herself to cry. Not just for Claire, not just for Marcus, but for the girl she'd been, who thought secrets could stay hidden and that the past wouldn't come knocking twice. The tears didn't last long. Elena forced herself up, wiped her face, and started packing. She would not be scared out of town. She would not run. Tomorrow she'd track down every name, every secret. She would find Daniel McKee. She would finally drag the truth out of Red Lake, no matter who tried to stop her. As Elena turns out the light, her phone vibrates, a message from an unknown number. You're not the only one looking for him. Be careful who you trust. Chapter 6. Flour, Fire, and What We Carry. Elena woke up before dawn, the threat from the night before still pulsing in her chest. The anonymous message echoed in her mind. You're not the only one looking for him. Be careful who you trust. It felt like the stakes had changed overnight, as if she had stepped off a cliff and was only now realizing how far there was to fall. She showered quickly, dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt, and checked the locks on every door and window. As the first orange streaks of daylight crept across Copper Falls, she forced herself to think methodically. She had names now, names of people who'd been at Red Lake that night, names of people who had grown up, stayed in town, and built new lives atop old secrets. One of them knew the truth about Daniel McKee. Her first stop was the Main Street Bakery, a narrow storefront that had stood for 50 years. It was run by Heather Boyd, one of the teenagers in the Polaroid, now a plump, tired-looking woman in her 60s with flour-dusted hands and sad eyes. Elena knew the risk of walking in, but she also knew that time was running out. The bell above the door jingled. The sweet smell of cinnamon rolls filled the air, mixing with the metallic tang of nerves. Heather was behind the counter, icing a tray of scones. When she looked up, her expression stiffened. "Elena Foster," she said, voice careful. "Heard you were back. Your mama was a good woman." Elena forced a smile. "Heather, can we talk?" Heather hesitated, then glanced around the empty shop and nodded toward a table near the window. She poured 2 coffees and sat, her posture tense. "You digging up the past?" Heather asked, not bothering to soften the question. "I have to," Elena replied. "My mother kept secrets. She died with them. I'm here for answers." Heather stared out at the street for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was raw. "I tried to forget that summer. We all did. Daniel was a sweet kid, smarter than anyone gave him credit for. But he saw things he shouldn't have. Seth Barnett's death. It was never an accident. We all knew it, even if no one said it." A flashback flared in Elena's mind, her mother, late at night, whispering into the phone, "If they ever come back, don't let them in, not until you know who they really are." As a child, Elena thought it was paranoia. Now she wasn't so sure. "Who killed Seth?" Elena pressed. Heather shook her head. "I don't know. Or maybe I do, but I can't prove it. That night, everything changed. Daniel ran. We thought he drowned too, but a week later someone broke into the bakery, left a single red feather on the floor. No note, no signature. After that, people stopped talking." Elena felt the weight of it, the way an entire town could collude in silence. "Where is Daniel now?" Heather's eyes darted away. "I heard he left the state, or maybe he's been hiding here all along. Your mama would have known." As Elena left, Heather pressed a warm loaf of bread into her hands. "For strength," she said. "You'll need it." The rest of the day blurred, a parade of faces and half-truths. Elena visited 2 more names from the list: Tom Porter, who worked at the feed store and who denied ever being at the lake, and Allison Reeves, who shut the door in Elena's face. The closer Elena got, the more Copper Falls seemed to close ranks against her. Late that afternoon, she drove to the outskirts of town. The old Red Lake Pier, now rotting and half-collapsed, loomed like a warning. Elena sat at the end of the dock, bread in her lap, watching dragonflies skitter over the water. She felt a memory rising. Her mother's laugh, the squeal of tires, the snap of a branch. For a moment she was 7 again, hiding beneath the dock as voices screamed overhead. She shook herself out of the memory and looked down. The dock boards had warped in the sun, but something caught her eye. A scorch mark, old but unmistakable in the shape of a boot print. Fire. There had been a fire here, and someone had tried to cover it up. Her phone buzzed. Marcus at last. "Elena?" His voice was strained. "Where are you?" she whispered. "I can't talk long. Someone's watching my place. I found something. You were right about Daniel. He's alive. He's been here all along using a different name. I'll text you an address. But be careful. They're watching you too." Before she could respond, the call ended. Moments later, a text arrived. Old Mill Road, red mailbox. Elena drove to the address, heart pounding. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the fields. She parked by the red mailbox and walked down a gravel path, boots crunching with every step. An old barn loomed ahead, abandoned but not empty. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of old hay. At the far end of the barn, a figure sat on a wooden crate, back to the door. "Daniel?" Elena called softly. The man turned. He was older than she expected, gray in his hair, but his eyes sharp with fear and defiance. "You shouldn't have come," he said, voice barely more than a whisper. Elena stepped closer. "I need to know the truth. About Seth, about my mother, about you." He laughed bitterly. "Truth. The truth died a long time ago. All that's left are ashes." Then let's sift through them, Elena replied, setting the loaf of bread between them as a peace offering. He stared at it, then at her. For a moment, something softened in his eyes. They'll be coming soon, he said. And when they do, no one in this town will be safe. Not you, not me, not even those who stayed silent. As dusk settled over Copper Falls, Elena realized that she wasn't chasing ghosts. She was running out of time. Whatever happened that night at Red Lake was about to happen again, unless she could stop it. Suddenly, outside the barn, the sound of tires on gravel, a car pulling up, headlights piercing the darkness. Daniel's eyes widen in terror. "Hide," he hisses. Elena freezes as the barn doors begin to creak open. Chapter 7, The Fire Next Door. Elena's body pressed flat against the rough boards of the barn wall as the heavy doors groaned open. She barely breathed, pulse pounding in her ears. Daniel motioned her deeper into the shadows. From her hiding place, Elena saw the silhouette of a tall man enter, flashlight beam cutting the gloom. His footsteps were careful, practiced, a local or someone who had been here before. The air in the barn was heavy with old hay and the unspoken fear of discovery. The man called out, "Daniel?" The voice was low and unmistakably familiar. Elena's mind raced. She'd heard it recently. Daniel didn't answer, and the man stepped further in, kicking at the straw. For a moment, silence pressed down, thick as syrup. Then Daniel emerged from the shadows, palms raised. "You shouldn't be here, Sam," he said, voice tired. Sam. Elena searched her memory. Sheriff Sam Jarrett, the very same man who'd grown up in Copper Falls, inherited his badge from his father, and kept the town's secrets as though they were sacred texts. He'd been one of the teens at Red Lake, back in the night that haunted everyone. "I got a call," Sam said, eyes darting around. "Saw your truck, the girl, Elena. She's in danger." Daniel's gaze flickered to the shadows where Elena hid. "She's not the only one." Sam lowered the flashlight. "I tried to keep you safe, Dan, all these years, but things are coming undone. People are talking. Someone burned down the Johnsons' shed last night, left a red feather nailed to the door." Daniel stiffened. "That's a warning." Elena remembered Heather's story from the bakery, the red feather, the silence that followed. A chill ran down her spine. This wasn't just about the past. Someone was actively trying to send a message or erase witnesses before the truth emerged. Sam continued, "Whoever did this isn't working alone. They want the old secrets buried, even if it means more bodies." Elena stepped out from the darkness. "I'm tired of hiding. If you want to protect us, then help us find out who's behind this. Who's sending the feathers? Why now?" The sheriff's face fell, lines deepening around his mouth. "You don't understand what you're asking, Elena. There are people in this town who will do anything to keep their reputations, their money, their power. You dig deep enough, you'll hit a wall, and that wall will hit back." Daniel reached for Elena's hand, grounding her. "We have to try, for Seth, for your mother, for all of us." Reluctantly, Sam nodded. "Meet me tonight at the old courthouse, midnight. Bring anything you have, names, documents, memories. But if anyone follows you, don't come." He turned, pausing in the doorway. "Be careful. The last fire was just a warning. Next time, they won't stop at sheds." As Sam's taillights vanished down the road, Daniel slumped against a crate. "You trust him?" Elena whispered. Daniel hesitated. "I trust that he wants to keep the town together, but sometimes good men do bad things to protect what they love." They left the barn together, sticking to back roads and empty fields, skirting the edge of the woods until Elena's car came into view. As they drove toward town, the horizon was tinged with orange, a fire in the distance. Elena's heart hammered. "That's near Main Street." She floored the gas. Flames devoured the old Miller house, smoke billowing high above Copper Falls. Firefighters struggled to contain it, but the house was too far gone. A crowd gathered, whispering rumors. Another red feather had been found nailed to the mailbox. Elena scanned the faces in the flickering light. Heather from the bakery, Tom Porter, Allison Reeves, Sheriff Sam, each wearing an expression of dread as if they all shared the same nightmare. Suddenly, Elena's phone vibrated, a text from Marcus. "I know who's next. Meet me by the bridge. Come alone." She turned to Daniel. "I have to go." Daniel's hand caught her arm. "It's not safe." "It's never been safe," she replied, voice steely. "Not for any of us." As Elena hurried through the chaotic streets, the memories came in waves. Her mother's anxious face, the hushed arguments late at night, the constant warning not to trust too easily. She understood now. The real fire wasn't in the houses, but in the secrets people kept, and how fiercely they'd burn to keep them hidden. When she reached the bridge, Marcus was waiting, shoulders hunched, eyes darting in the darkness. "It's the Reeves family," he blurted. "Allison's husband. He's the link. He was at Red Lake. He's the one sending the feathers. He's trying to cover up what happened that night, and he'll hurt anyone who remembers." Before Elena could respond, headlights flashed from the far side of the bridge. A pickup truck barreled toward them, engine roaring. Marcus shoved her aside as the truck swerved onto the shoulder, its door flying open. A masked figure leapt out, brandishing a tire iron. "Run!" Marcus yelled. Elena dashed into the trees, her breath ragged, branches slapping her arms. Behind her, she heard Marcus cry out, a dull, sickening thud. The sound of struggle echoed through the night, then silence. She crouched in the shadows, heart pounding, waiting for the footsteps to pass. When she dared to look back, the truck was gone. Marcus lay motionless on the gravel, blood pooling beneath his head. Elena knelt beside him, hands shaking. He was alive, barely, eyes fluttering. He grabbed her wrist, voice hoarse. "Don't trust anyone. Reeves." Then his eyes closed. Sirens wailed in the distance. Elena stood, wiping tears from her cheeks. The town wasn't just haunted by the past, it was being hunted by it. She had a name now, and the threat was closer than ever. As the first responders approached, Elena disappeared into the darkness, determined that this fire, the one that had scorched Copper Falls for decades, would be the last. At that moment, Allison Reeves stands alone in her kitchen, staring at a Polaroid photograph. She takes out a red feather, presses it to her lips, and whispers, "One more, and it's finished." The camera pans out, revealing a revolver on the table. The past is about to claim its next victim. Chapter 8. The Past Never Forgets. The town of Copper Falls didn't sleep that night. Sirens howled through the streets, lights flashed behind curtains, and neighbors whispered at their windows. Elena moved like a shadow, slipping between alleyways and fences, careful not to be seen. Every step she took felt heavier than the last, the burden of the night growing in her chest. She made her way back to the old Carter house on Willow Street. She'd never felt so alone or so watched. It wasn't just paranoia. At every corner, she saw headlights pausing a beat too long, heard the click of a camera shutter, sensed the hum of a phone call cut short when she passed. Someone was tracking her every move, maybe more than one someone. Inside, she found Daniel waiting at the kitchen table, head in his hands. He looked up, face pale and drawn. "Did you find Marcus?" he asked, voice raw. Elena nodded, unable to hide the tremor in her hands. "He's hurt, badly, but he gave me a name. Reeves, Allison's husband. He was at Red Lake. He's behind the feathers." Daniel's jaw clenched. "That can't be. I've known Rick Reeves my whole life. He's a coward, not a killer." "We don't know what people will do to protect themselves," Elena said quietly, "especially when the past is clawing at their door." A sudden noise, glass shattering in the backyard. Daniel shot to his feet, grabbing the old hunting rifle from the closet. Elena crouched low as footsteps pounded on the porch. For a breathless moment, she thought the door would cave in. But then, just as suddenly, the footsteps retreated, lost in the dark. Daniel peeked through the curtains. Nothing, just shadows. But Elena wasn't convinced. She remembered Sam's warning, "If someone follows you, don't come." Maybe this was their last chance to run. They waited in silence. Finally, Elena said, "We need to finish this, tonight, before someone else gets hurt." She pulled out the folder she'd taken from her mother's box, the one with letters, news clippings, and a single faded photograph of teenagers standing on the dock at Red Lake, summer of 1998. Summer, 1998. The dock creaked under bare feet as the group gathered. Sam Jarrett, Rick Reeves, Daniel, Allison, and, at the edge, Elena's mother, Susan. They were young, drunk on sun and stolen beer, daring each other to jump, to swim, to confess secrets. That night, something had happened. Elena's mother had always refused to talk about it. But as Elena stared at the photo, a memory surfaced. A whispered argument behind closed doors, her mother's voice choked with fear. "We have to stick together. No one can ever find out." Present, Daniel ran his thumb over the faces in the photograph. "We all lost something that summer," he said, voice distant. Susan never forgave herself. She left us because of that night, Elena said, realization dawning, not because she wanted to, but because someone forced her to. Daniel nodded slowly. She got a letter every year on the anniversary. No return address, just a red feather and a single line. Remember what you did. She burned them, but I saw. She was scared for you, Elena. That's why she sent you away. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. All these years I thought she didn't love me. She loved you too much to keep you close, Daniel whispered. A knock at the door, soft, then urgent. Elena tensed. Daniel raised the rifle. But it was only Heather, pale and breathless, clutching a folder to her chest. They're coming for you, Heather gasped. Rick's not alone. The others, they're meeting at the courthouse. They're going to pin everything on you, Elena. On your mom, too. Elena's stomach dropped. Why me? Heather hesitated, then handed her the folder. Because you're the last piece, the only one who doesn't have something to lose here. They need a scapegoat. Inside the folder were copies of old police reports, handwritten notes, and a recent bank transfer, money moving from Rick Reeves to Sam Jarrett, then onward to a numbered account in Mexico. Blackmail. Cover-up. Daniel swore under his breath. We need to go. Now, he said. They slipped out the back, sticking to shadows. The courthouse loomed ahead, its white columns glowing under harsh floodlights. Figures moved inside, Sam, Rick, Allison, and two others Elena didn't recognize. Inside, the air was tense. Sam looked up, eyes bloodshot. You shouldn't have come. Rick Reeves sneered. Too late now. We'll finish it tonight. Elena stepped forward, voice steady. You spent years running from the truth. How many more have to burn before you face it? Allison's hands shook. You don't understand, Elena. If it all comes out, we lose everything. Our jobs, our families, this whole town. Daniel spoke, quiet but firm. It's already lost. The fire, the blackmail, the threats. You've been living in a prison of your own making. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Sam pulled a gun from his belt and tossed it on the table. No more secrets, not tonight. If we're going down, we're all going down together. A scream outside. The courthouse doors slammed open. Police swarmed in, led by a new face, Special Agent Laura Kim, the woman Elena had seen in town days earlier. Everyone down! This is a federal investigation. Hands where I can see them. Chaos erupted. Rick lunged for the gun. Daniel tackled him. Allison burst into tears. Sam slumped in defeat. Elena watched as the past finally broke open, spilling secrets that had been buried for decades into the harsh light of truth. And as the cuffs clicked around the wrists of those who'd spent their lives running, she finally understood her mother's words. The past never forgets. As Elena sat alone outside the courthouse, the first hints of dawn streaked the sky. A black SUV idled across the street. The window rolled down. Allison's teenage daughter looked out, her expression unreadable, then pressed something against the glass, a single red feather. The next generation had inherited the secret. The cycle was not yet broken. Chapter 9, Truth in the Ashes. When dawn broke over Willow Creek, the town felt different, stripped raw by the secrets and storms that had battered it all autumn. For the first time in months, the sky was clear, and the sunlight glinted off rain-soaked sidewalks as if trying to bleach out every sin committed in the shadows. But for Evelyn Sanders, there would be no erasing what had been done, only reckoning remained. She hadn't slept the night before, after the revelations in the hospital room. Her sister June's tearful confession, the unexpected appearance of Private Investigator Maddox with his cache of letters, the thunderstorm that rattled the windows. Evelyn sat at the kitchen table, hands shaking around a mug of coffee gone cold. She replayed every lie she'd told herself, that her husband's affair was just a phase, that her son's troubles would work themselves out, that the small betrayals she'd committed to keep the family together were worth the price. Now, with the full picture finally coming into focus, Evelyn felt both hollowed out and weirdly light, as if something had been cut loose inside her. The truth was ugly, but it was clean. She dressed with slow determination, choosing a navy suit that still carried the scent of cedar from the back of her closet. This morning, she would face the family, what was left of it, without armor, without spin, without hope for forgiveness. Only the need to tell the whole story. Downstairs, Maddox was already waiting. He stood by the window, scanning old texts and photos on his phone, pausing only to offer Evelyn a curt nod. In the brief, heavy silence, there was a shared understanding. Today would not be about comfort. It would be about confrontation. By 8:30, the family was gathered in the living room. June, pale but composed. Carter, their father, with hands trembling in his lap. Lisa, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. Even Tom, Evelyn's wayward son, sat quietly on the edge of the sofa, looking 10 years older than his 22. Maddox began, his voice low and even. "We all know why we're here. The secrets that nearly destroyed this family are out in the open. But there's one more piece left, one final thread." He turned to Evelyn, who nodded. Evelyn's confession came in waves. She spoke of the money she'd funneled from the family business to cover Tom's gambling debts, of the false invoices she'd created to hide her tracks. She admitted to forging her husband's signature on loan documents, rationalizing it as self-preservation, when in reality it was pure panic. She described the night she'd discovered the affair, not through some dramatic confrontation, but in a single, silent email, read and reread until the words blurred. "I thought if I controlled the damage, if I managed everyone else's pain, it would hurt less," she finished, her voice nearly a whisper. "But I was wrong, it only multiplied it." For a moment, no one spoke. Carter stared at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. Tom looked down, unable to meet her eyes. June pressed her lips together, tears sliding down her face in silent rivulets. Maddox cleared his throat and handed Evelyn a folder. "These are the real bank statements. The ones you hid. I found them in the safe deposit box, registered under your maiden name." Evelyn opened the folder, her hands trembling as she saw the extent of the damage. The loans, the missed payments, the mounting interest. There was no hiding from it now. But June reached for her mother's hand. "You should have trusted us. You should have trusted yourself. We're not perfect, but we're not broken beyond repair. Not unless we give up on each other." For the first time since her husband's betrayal, Evelyn let herself cry. Not the silent, angry tears she'd shed in the dark, but real, cathartic sobs that shook her body. She wept for the years lost to pride, to silence, to the exhausting effort of keeping the peace at any cost. When she finally looked up, she saw her family's faces, bruised, yes, but open. Tom even managed a small, sad smile. "I screwed up too, Mom, but maybe we can fix it together." Carter nodded. "We built this family once. We can rebuild it again. No more secrets." For the first time in years, Evelyn believed him. The aftermath was not simple. Lawyers were called. The family business, once the pride of Willow Creek, was put up for sale, proceeds to pay off debts and start fresh elsewhere. There were angry calls from distant relatives, whispers around town, stares in the grocery store. But Evelyn met every gaze with her head held high. The truth, finally spoken, was armor enough. Maddox finished his report and left town, his job done, but not before he gave Evelyn one last piece of advice. "Forgive yourself, Mrs. Sanders. You're the only one who can." She tried, every day. Some days were easier than others. She attended group therapy, rebuilt her relationships one painstaking conversation at a time, and even found work at the public library, far from her old life but closer to something like peace. Lisa, her daughter, found a way to forgive her parents, but only after months of distance. Tom entered a recovery program and began to make amends. June and her husband patched things up slowly, cracks still visible but healing. And as the seasons changed, so did the Sanders family. Not perfectly, not without scars, but together, honest for the first time. A year later, on the anniversary of the day everything fell apart, Evelyn stood in front of the old family house, now empty and up for sale. The sky was the same sharp blue, the air just as crisp. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the keys. For a moment she hesitated, tempted to keep them as a reminder of what she'd lost. Then she let them fall into the realtor's hand. Some endings are just beginnings in disguise. She walked away without looking back.